You're standing in an elevator on the 100th floor of a skyscraper, sipping your morning coffee, when suddenly the cable snaps. The elevator plunges. In that terrifying moment, something strange happens. Your coffee, which a second ago obeyed gravity by sitting calmly in the cup, now floats in front of your face like a little brown planet. You feel weightless. Your stomach lurches. And here's the question that changed physics forever. In that falling elevator, is gravity still pulling on you? Most people would say yes, of course, gravity is what's making you fall. But a young patent clerk in Bern, Switzerland, sitting at his desk in 1907, had a different answer. An answer so radical, so utterly bizarre, that it would unravel everything humanity thought it knew about gravity. His name was Albert Einstein, and he came to a stunning conclusion. Gravity, the force that holds you to your chair, that keeps the moon orbiting Earth, that binds galaxies across the cosmos, isn't actually a force at all. It's something far stranger, and to understand what it really is, we need to throw out almost everything Isaac Newton told us. For 300 years, Newton's picture of gravity reigned supreme. It was beautiful in its simplicity. Every object in the universe pulls on every other object with a force that depends on their masses and the distance between them. An apple falls because Earth pulls it. The moon orbits because Earth pulls it. The planets dance around the sun because the sun pulls them. Newton gave us equations so precise that we could predict eclipses centuries in advance, launch ships to other planets, and chart the motions of the heavens with extraordinary accuracy. But there was a problem so deep that Newton himself was haunted by it until the day he died. He could describe gravity with stunning mathematical precision, but he could not explain what it actually was. How does the sun reach across 93 million miles of empty space and tug on Earth? There's no rope, no string, no visible connection. Newton called it action at a distance, and privately he admitted the idea was absurd. In a letter to a colleague, he wrote that the notion of one body affecting another through a vacuum, without any mediator, was so great an absurdity that no competent thinker could ever believe it. And yet, his equations worked. So physicists shrugged and used them. For 2 centuries, nobody could do better. Then came Einstein. And the strange thing is, his journey to overthrowing Newton didn't begin with complicated mathematics or expensive experiments. It began with a daydream. Einstein later called it the happiest thought of his life. He was sitting at his desk in the patent office, probably bored out of his mind reviewing patents for electrical devices, when a simple image popped into his head. He imagined a man falling off a roof, and he realized something profound. During that fall, before the man hits the ground, he would feel no weight. If he let go of a hammer mid-fall, the hammer would float beside him, falling at exactly the same rate. From the falling man's perspective, gravity would have vanished. It would be as if he were drifting in deep space far from any planet. This wasn't just a curious observation. Einstein realized it pointed to something fundamental about the nature of reality. There was no experiment the falling man could perform inside a sealed box that would tell him whether he was falling toward Earth or floating in deep space. The 2 situations were physically identical. Now flip the scenario around. Imagine you're in a rocket ship far from any planet, with the engines firing to accelerate the ship upward at 9.8 meters per second squared, the same rate that gravity pulls objects down on Earth. If you let go of a ball, what would happen? The ball would appear to fall to the floor. Why? Because the floor is rushing up to meet it. But from your perspective inside the rocket, with no windows to the outside, it would look and feel exactly like gravity. You couldn't tell the difference between standing on Earth and accelerating through space. Einstein gave this idea a name. He called it the equivalence principle. Gravity and acceleration are not just similar. They are, in some deep sense, the same thing. And if that's true, then gravity might not be a force pulling on objects at all. It might be something about the nature of motion itself, something about the very fabric of space and time. To understand where Einstein went next, we have to talk about space and time, and how he had already shaken them up just 2 years earlier in 1905 with his special theory of relativity. Before Einstein, people thought of space as a kind of empty stage on which events unfold, and time as a universal clock ticking the same for everyone. Einstein showed that this wasn't true. Time slows down for objects moving fast. Distances shrink. 2 people moving relative to each other can't even agree on whether 2 events happened at the same time. Space and time weren't separate things. They were woven together into a single 4-dimensional fabric, what we now call space-time. Once you accept that space and time are connected, you can ask a strange new question. What if gravity is what happens when this fabric of space-time gets bent? What if massive objects like the sun or the Earth actually distort the geometry of space and time around them? And what we call gravity is just objects following the natural curves of this warped landscape? This is where the most famous analogy in modern physics comes in. Imagine a stretched rubber sheet. perfectly flat and taut. Now place a bowling ball in the middle. The sheet sags downward, creating a deep depression around the ball. Now take a small marble and roll it across the sheet near the bowling ball. What happens? The marble curves toward the bowling ball, not because the ball is pulling on it with some mysterious force, but because the marble is simply rolling along the warped surface. If you give the marble just the right speed and direction, it might even orbit the bowling ball, circling around the depression like a coin in one of those funnel donation boxes you see in shopping malls. This is Einstein's vision of gravity. The sun isn't pulling on the Earth across 93 million miles of empty space. The sun is bending the space-time around it, creating a kind of cosmic valley, and Earth is just rolling along the contours of that valley, following what it perceives as a perfectly straight path through curved space-time. Now, the rubber sheet analogy is helpful, but I have to be honest with you, it's also misleading in important ways. For one thing, the sheet only shows space being curved in 2 dimensions, while real space-time is curved in 4. For another, the sheet itself uses gravity to demonstrate gravity. The bowling ball makes the sheet sag because Earth's gravity pulls it down. So in a sense, the analogy explains gravity by assuming gravity. But the deeper problem is this. The rubber sheet picture makes you think gravity is primarily about space being curved. It's not. The most important curvature, the one that actually causes most of what we call gravity, is the curvature of time. And this is one of the most mind-bending insights in all of physics. When you drop an apple from a tree, the apple doesn't fall because space is curved around the Earth. It falls because time itself flows at slightly different rates at different heights. Time near the ground ticks slightly slower than time up in the branches. And objects, when given the freedom to move through space-time, always follow paths that maximize the time they experience. The apple, in essence, is falling toward where time runs slower. It's not being pulled. It's taking the path of greatest aging. Let me say that again because it's so strange. Gravity is, in large part, objects falling toward regions where time slows down. You, right now sitting wherever you're sitting, are being pressed into your chair not because some invisible hand is pushing you down, but because Earth's mass is slowing time near its surface, and your body, if left free, would naturally drift toward that slower time region. The chair or the ground is what stops you from following that natural path. The force you feel pressing on your feet or your back isn't gravity pulling you down. It's the floor pushing you up, preventing you from falling into the slower flow of time below. In the framework of general relativity, the only time you actually feel a force is when something is pushing you off your natural path through space-time. When you're in free fall, when you're truly weightless, you're following the path the universe wants you to follow. You're not experiencing any force at all. This is why astronauts on the International Space Station float around as if there's no gravity, even though they're only about 400 kilometers above Earth, where gravitational pull is still nearly as strong as on the surface. They're not in zero gravity, they're in free fall. They're constantly falling toward Earth, but moving sideways so fast that they keep missing it. From their perspective, gravity simply isn't there. They're following the curves of space-time, and the universe is letting them be. This is also why a falling skydiver before opening their parachute feels weightless even though they're plummeting toward Earth at terminal velocity. The sensation of weight, the heavy feeling in your bones, isn't gravity. It's the resistance of the ground or the chair or your shoes preventing you from following your natural geodesic, the straightest possible path through curved space-time. Einstein worked on this idea for 8 long, grueling years. He had the basic vision in 1907, but turning it into a full mathematical theory required learning entirely new branches of geometry that most physicists had never heard of. He had to teach himself the work of obscure 19th century mathematicians like Bernhard Riemann, who had developed the mathematics of curved spaces decades earlier, never imagining it would describe the real universe. Einstein famously said during this period that compared to the problem of gravity, his earlier work on special relativity was child's play. He suffered headaches, exhaustion, and stomach problems. He nearly gave up multiple times. But in November of 1915, after a furious month of work where he revised his equations week by week, he finally arrived at what we now call the Einstein field equations, 10 interlocking equations that describe how matter and energy tell spacetime how to curve, and how curved spacetime tells matter and energy how to move. The American physicist John Wheeler later summarized it beautifully. Spacetime tells matter how to move. Matter tells spacetime how to curve. That's gravity in one sentence. But a theory, no matter how elegant, is just speculation until it's tested. Einstein knew his theory had to make predictions that differed from Newton's, predictions that could be checked against reality. The first test was already sitting in the data. For decades, astronomers had been puzzled by a strange wobble in the orbit of Mercury, the closest planet to the Sun. Mercury's orbit didn't quite close on itself the way Newton's laws predicted. The point of closest approach to the sun, called the perihelion, was drifting forward by a tiny amount each century, an extra 43 arc-seconds beyond what Newton could account for. It was a small discrepancy, but it was real, and it had bothered astronomers for over 50 years. When Einstein plugged Mercury's numbers into his new equations, out came 43 arc-seconds. Exactly. He later said his heart pounded so violently he could hardly continue. His theory had explained, on its first try, a mystery that had defied physicists for half a century. But the real triumph came in 1919 during a total solar eclipse. Einstein's theory predicted that the gravity of the sun, which according to him was really just curved space-time, should bend the path of light passing near it. Light from distant stars skimming past the edge of the sun should be deflected by a precise amount, twice as much as Newton's theory would predict. The problem was, you can't normally see stars near the sun because the sun is so bright. But during a total eclipse, when the moon blocks the sun's disk, those nearby stars become briefly visible. A British astronomer named Arthur Eddington led an expedition to the island of Principe off the coast of Africa to photograph the eclipse on May 29, 1919. He compared the positions of stars near the eclipsed sun to their positions when the sun was elsewhere in the sky. The stars had shifted by exactly the amount Einstein had predicted. When the results were announced in London a few months later, Einstein became an overnight global celebrity. The headline in the Times of London read, "Revolution in Science. New Theory of the Universe. Newtonian Ideas Overthrown." A relatively unknown German physicist had just rewritten the laws of the cosmos. What makes general relativity so beautiful and so unsettling is that it doesn't just tweak Newton's theory. It replaces it with a completely different conception of what gravity is. In Newton's universe, gravity is a force, a tug, an instantaneous pull across empty space. In Einstein's universe, gravity is geometry. There is no force. There is no pull. There is only the shape of space-time and objects gliding along its contours like rivers flowing through valleys carved into the landscape. And once you start thinking about gravity this way, all sorts of strange consequences emerge. Massive objects don't just curve space and slow time around themselves. They can curve space-time so severely that they create regions from which not even light can escape. We call these regions black holes. At the center of a black hole, according to general relativity, space-time curvature becomes infinite, forming what mathematicians call a singularity, a place where the equations break down and our current understanding of physics simply stops working. Black holes were initially considered a strange mathematical artifact of Einstein's equations. Even Einstein himself didn't believe they could be real, but we now know they exist. We've photographed them. The supermassive black hole at the center of our own galaxy, called Sagittarius A star, was directly imaged by the Event Horizon Telescope in 2022. It is, in a very real sense, a place where the curvature of space-time has folded in on itself. And here's another mind-bending consequence. If massive objects curve space-time, and if that curvature can change, then changes in curvature should propagate outward through the universe like ripples on a pond. Einstein predicted these ripples almost as an afterthought in 1916. He called them gravitational waves. They would be incredibly faint, far too weak to detect with any technology available in his lifetime. For 100 years, gravitational waves remained a theoretical curiosity. Then, on September 14, 2015, a pair of instruments called LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, detected a signal. Two black holes, each about 30 times the mass of the Sun, had spiraled into each other and merged, more than 1 billion light-years away from Earth. The collision released more energy in a fraction of a second than all the stars in the observable universe combined, but it released it entirely as ripples in space-time. Those ripples traveled across the cosmos for over 1 billion years before passing through Earth on that September morning, stretching and squeezing our planet by an amount smaller than the width of a proton. LIGO detected the wobble. Einstein had been right again, exactly a century after his prediction. But here's something that's not just theoretical curiosity. Einstein's theory affects your daily life in a way you probably haven't thought about. Pull out your phone and open a Maps app. The little blue dot showing your location is determined by GPS satellites orbiting Earth at about 20,000 kilometers up. Those satellites carry incredibly precise atomic clocks. And here's the thing, time runs at a slightly different rate up there than it does down here on the ground. According to general relativity, the satellites' clocks tick faster than ground clocks by about 45 microseconds per day because they're farther from Earth's mass and time flows quicker where space-time is less curved. According to special relativity, their clocks tick slower by about 7 microseconds per day because they're moving fast. Net result, the satellite clocks gain about 38 microseconds every day compared to clocks on the ground. If we didn't correct for this, GPS would drift by about 11 kilometers per day. You'd ask your phone to navigate you to a coffee shop and end up in another neighborhood. Every time you use GPS, you're using technology that depends on understanding that gravity is the curvature of space-time and that time itself flows differently at different heights. Einstein's strange daydream from a Swiss patent office now keeps planes from crashing and helps you find your way home. There's a question that often comes up at this point, and I think it's worth sitting with. If gravity isn't really a force, why does it feel like one? Why does the apple seem to be pulled to the ground? Why does the earth seem to be pulling on me right now? The answer is subtle. What you call the pull of gravity is actually the sensation of being pushed by the ground. Imagine yourself right now trying to follow your natural path through curved space-time. That path would carry you downward toward the center of the earth, accelerating as you fell. But you're not falling. Why? Because the ground is in the way. The ground is constantly pushing up against you, knocking you off your natural geodesic. The pressure you feel on your feet, the weight in your bones, the heaviness when you stand up too quickly, all of it is the sensation of the earth pushing you upward, away from the path you'd otherwise follow. The truly mind-bending realization is this: when you jump off a diving board, you're not being pulled down. You're finally free. You're following the geometry of space-time exactly as Einstein imagined, and then the water or the ground comes along and pushes you again, and you call that landing. Of course, no theory in science is ever the final word. General relativity, as beautiful and well-tested as it is, has a problem. It doesn't get along with quantum mechanics, the other great pillar of modern physics that describes how the universe works at the smallest scales. Quantum mechanics treats space and time as a fixed, smooth stage on which particles dance according to the rules of probability. General relativity says space and time are dynamic, curving, bending, rippling. When you try to combine them, the equations explode into nonsense. At the very smallest scales, in the heart of a black hole or at the moment of the Big Bang, both theories should apply, but neither alone is enough. Physicists have been searching for almost a century for a theory of quantum gravity that would unite the two. String theory, loop quantum gravity, and other approaches have all been proposed. So far, none has been confirmed by experiment. The deepest nature of gravity, whatever it ultimately is, remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of physics. But even without that final answer, Einstein's vision stands as one of the most extraordinary achievements of the human mind. A patent clerk sitting at his desk in Bern imagined a man falling from a roof. From that simple daydream, he unraveled a picture of reality so strange that it took years of mathematics, decades of experiments, and an army of physicists and astronomers to verify. He showed us that what we call a force, what we feel as weight, what makes apples fall and planets orbit, is not really a force at all, but the shape of the universe itself. He showed us that time and space are flexible, that mass and energy bend them, that we are all moving along contours we cannot see in a landscape carved by the matter around us. So the next time you drop your keys and watch them clatter to the floor, take a moment. Those keys aren't being pulled down by some invisible hand. They're following the curvature of space-time, taking the path of greatest aging, gliding along the geometry of the cosmos. The next time you stand up and feel the weight in your legs, remember that what you're feeling isn't gravity tugging at you, but the earth pushing you up, preventing you from following your natural path. The next time you look up at the moon, remember that it isn't orbiting the earth, because earth is pulling on it. It's coasting through a valley in space-time that earth's mass has carved out, traveling in what it experiences as a perfectly straight line through a curved universe. And the next time someone asks you why things fall down, you can smile and tell them the strangest truth in all of physics. They don't. They fall along. There's a quiet kind of wonder in this, I think. We grew up believing in a universe of pushes and pulls, of forces tugging on objects through empty space. But Einstein showed us something more elegant. The universe doesn't need forces to make things move. It just needs geometry. Matter sculpts the stage. Everything else dances along the contours. And somewhere in this dance, in the curves and ripples and slow rivers of time, lies the deepest secret of why anything happens at all. We are all of us, every star, every planet, every person, and every photon, following paths we did not choose, etched into a fabric we cannot see, bending under the weight of everything that exists. That isn't a force. That's something far more beautiful. That's the shape of reality itself, and we are only just beginning to understand it.